I'm here. Hello, everyone. This is Eileen Williams. Hopefully, everyone can hear all of us. We have a very, very special webinar tonight. I'm very excited about it. We just had our kickoffs here in the Americas and the North American kickoffs, and we had an incredible presentation by Dr. Mark Bartlett, who is the Vice President of Global Research and Development for PharmaNex. And Mark is an incredible asset to our company. I asked him to come on tonight and share what he shared at the kickoff about this new product called Youth that we're just about to launch. Before I turn it over to him, I want you all to know how amazing it is that we get to work with him. Before joining PharmaNex, he was with the National Institute of Health. He was also with the National Cancer Institute in Bethesda, Maryland. His areas of expertise is immunology, inflammation and autoimmunity, antioxidant and phytonutrients, lipids and fatty acids, pro and prebiotics. He is an extraordinary scientist in his own right, and he's a great communicator. And so, Mark, thank you so much for joining us tonight and sharing with us, your expertise on this new product we're all so excited about.
Oh, great. Thanks a lot, Eileen. That was a nice introduction. I appreciate it. It makes me sound like a nice guy. So it's kind of, I wanted to present more of an overview tonight, not too much technical detail, but just give you a perspective of the company and where it's been and sort of how we do science. And of course, we focus on aging. We're really interested. We've been interested for years in aging. The company's at least 30 years old. And every now and then I watch Oprah, and I saw a really funny episode one time when Chris Rock was on the show. And it kind of helped remind me of what we were doing. Chris Rock, it was his 46th birthday. And Oprah looked at him and said, you know, Chris, you're looking really 46. That's pretty amazing. And Chris Rock answered and he said, well, this is rich 46. That's like poor 34. And of course, as usual, he's politically incorrect. And I don't know how many people are offended by that comment. But there's something to think about there that, here's a guy who's not quite 50. So the first 50 years of his life is looking pretty good. He's successful and he's looking good for his age. And, that sort of strikes at the heart of Nu Skin, I think, where we're trying to help people to be independent and successful on the business side. And one way that we're doing that is by approaching this anti-aging strategy so that we can actually look good and feel confident and discover the best you, in the first 50 years and in the next 50 years of your life. So for 30 years or more, Nu Skin has been focused on strategies for anti-aging, both in nutrition and in skin. And, fortunately, we've invested in the science because, as I'll share with you, our approach is really to target the sources of aging. And we have, for an example, about 70 scientists. This isn't all of them here, but I've just sort of shown you a smattering of some of my friends that I work with every day. About 30 PhDs and about 40 or 50 other scientists, not only in Provo, Utah, where we have a state-of-the-art innovation center there with 5 laboratories that are doing chemistry, clinical studies, microbiology, all of the things that we need to do to investigate science on both the skin and the nutrition levels, but also a sister facility in southern China where we also have several PhDs and a bunch of chemists and other scientists working in an equally state-of-the-art lab that was just finished a couple of years ago, a beautiful facility. So the company is invested in the science. It's really, there's various approaches, but one that we enjoy is this approach where we have a number of different disciplines. As you can see, several on the screen there, pharmacology, immunology, biochemistry, nutrition, even biomedical engineering. And we believe that it's at the intersection of these different disciplines is where innovation really happens, because those different disciplines, as they interconnect, really look at the same problem in a very different way. And sometimes, quite often, that's where innovation happens. That's where it comes from. So the approach that we're using that also really necessitates science is that we're looking at the sources of aging. So when you think about aging and how a scientist might approach it, or even how you might tackle an issue in your life, whether it's beauty, is you can look at the signs and symptoms and try a symptomatic approach. And that may be, let's say your energy starts to decline as you age. That's often associated. And so what are some approaches you could use there? Young people try Red Bull, older people drink coffee, right? I think you'll agree that that is a symptomatic approach. It's really not going to the heart of why a person is feeling that decline in energy as they age, right? It's just sort of boosting temporarily and artificially the energy, and it's not going to make you younger in any way. But what if you could look at the sources of aging? What if you could go to the reason why there seems to be an energy decline as we age, or the reason why the skin tends to wrinkle as we get older? And if we can understand the scientific reasons behind it, then we can try an approach that might help us to slow that process, or basically attacking aging from the inside, right? So, this is along the way, as we've sort of tried to understand aging at the source, we've gained many insights. It actually started with, the brilliant founders of our company, Blake Roney, for example, who had to wear all the hats when he started the company. And, quite simply, the company started with a concept of personal care and all of the good, none of the bad, meaning an early recognition that many of the vehicles that are used to carry these actives that might be good for the skin are actually detrimental. So, it was quite difficult at first, but they were able to find a way of formulating products that had, no petrochemicals or alcohols, but only very skin-friendly vehicles that could carry those anti-aging actives. Interestingly, and in a great example of a targeting the sources approach, the founders did notice that as good as these products were, and we believe that they were the best on the market at the time, and people certainly felt the difference as they put them on their skin, some individuals just did not seem to gain the full benefit. Their hair wasn't shiny, their skin really wasn't as radiant and as good looking and hydrated as it should have. Maybe the nails were still cracking. And after a bit of research, Blake Roney and his small team at the time recognized that some beauty comes from within, and that if you're marginally deficient in some of the micronutrients that your body requires to make healthy skin or healthy hair or healthy nails, then it doesn't matter what you put on your skin. You won't be sort of the best you, right? So that's when they actually formulated a product based on the science that they were aware of at the time, and it was called Image HN. So a new half of the company was actually born at that time. Image HNS stood for hair, nails, and skin. And that was really the first, almost 30 years ago, the first example of what is now a discipline called cosmeceuticals, right? Where various companies today then have a nutritional product to supplement their skincare products. And, it's interesting that we actually stumbled across that, nearly 30 years ago. So we've actually, again, in following this concept of different disciplines getting together and innovating, Nu Skin was able to gain more insights when we joined our collective brains and scientific effort with a team, with a company named LifeGen Technologies. And LifeGen Technologies consists of mainly two individuals. One, a gerontologist named Richard Weindrich. Okay, gerontology is the science of aging, so we like to call Rick an aging scientist. I guess it depends what emphasis you put on the right syllable, right? But a man who spent 30 years or more of his life studying the aging process, and unlike a lot of gerontologists, or I'd probably think be right to say the majority, Weindrich actually believed that you could change the aging paradigm, slow it down with certain nutritional strategies. This isn't the normal approach of a gerontologist, by the way. Normally, they're just looking at sort of observational biology. They're helping us to understand what happens as you age. You know, why do you start to forget things? Why is there an energy deficit or cognitive decline? Why does your skin change? Why does your hair change? And that's all very interesting from a scientific and biochemical and physiological point of view, but doesn't necessarily serve us, other than sort of helping us to know what to expect and resign ourselves to our fate, right? So an interesting approach that he has had for all these years is to look for nutritional strategies that can slow the aging process. So very interesting science in its own right, but it was made even more compelling when a certain individual, Thomas Proler, the other half of LifeGen, who is a cancer geneticist, worked in Lester Packer's lab, originally from Brazil, but was always interested in aging, but found himself in the field of cancer genetics, and was using the gene chip. And the gene chip is the ability to measure the work output of every single gene in your body in one experiment. So actually able to measure what's called the transcriptome. Well, basically, each of the genes in your body, you have about 25,000 of them, each gene can express itself either at a high level or a low level, and the sum of all of the activity of these genes and the effect that they have on the biochemistry of your body basically is the human body, the creation and the maintenance of that body. And there's differential expression of all of these 25,000 genes. The gene chip in a single experiment can tell you, which genes are turned on, which genes are turned off, which genes are somewhere in between, and how much. It's amazing technology. And Weinrich came to, at least Proler came to Weinrich at the University of Wisconsin and said, look, I know you're doing all of this very interesting work on nutritional strategies that seem to be able to slow the aging process in the monkeys and that he was working in. So some of the most amazing research that he was doing. So Proler said, why don't we measure this aging process, compare old and young, compare aging well to aging normally, and look at the difference in gene expression patterns and establish a pattern that can be equated with youth, with age, with aging well, with aging not so well, basically gaining huge insight, measuring aging at the genetic level. And it was the application of this really advanced science that has led us to where we are when Nuskin joined with them. It's a new world and it's kind of complicated. Each gene chip has about 45,000 data points. So you're getting a lot of information from each gene chip. Now imagine comparing two biological states, old and young. Now you've got 90,000 data points, but you're going to pull out of those data points the most significant patterns that are different between the two, right? So now that you've got a pattern that's associated with age and youth and which genes are changing. Not all of the genes are obviously going to change as you age. The DNA, remember, is fixed for life, but the expression of each of those genes they found does change. And they were able to zero in on those changes that most robustly happen as you age, or look at differences between healthy aging and unhealthy aging. Again, a lot of data points gathered, because when you do an experiment, you don't just look at two individuals, you're comparing many. So already at this point, we have over 500 million genetic data points. And I think this is actually sort of an underestimation. But it's allowed us, once you can measure something, now you can screen for ingredients that can affect that process. So we can look at diets around the world, or we can look at particular ingredients or phytochemicals and feed those and look at gene expression changes and look to see if we can establish those same patterns that are associated with youth and aging and healthy aging. So this is something that has allowed us to formulate more cutting-edge products, more innovative products over the past several years. We started with the skin, with transformation, and we're able to identify changes in the skin associated with aging, and then screen for ingredients that help to establish a pattern of healthy gene expression in skin. We introduced some of those ingredients to our amazing facial spa, which if you don't know about, ask one of your friends. My first foray into this area then on the nutrition side was looking at energy deficit as you age. zeroing in on the mitochondria and the genes that are associated with the gene expression associated with healthy mitochondria, which is responsible for our energy. Later, the body spa, where we actually took sort of the facial spa to the whole body using some of these anti-aging ingredients. True Face Essence Ultra. Later, we tried our hand and looking at sort of a more complex approach with body shape and weight management. And finally, today, I'm going to talk a little bit about this concept of youth and a little about Age Like Me. All right, and you know, this enables us also to go into the future with other things, and so we have code names for our next couple of strategies, Epsilon as well as Kappa. But I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, so I just want to talk a little bit more about our latest research and the approach that we used here. But first, let me sort of define a little bit what we call youth span or aging well. So, you know, when we think about anti-aging products, some people might think that we're talking about necessarily extending your life. And that's really not what we're talking about here. Just imagine, if you look here at this graph, you see the y-axis is called youthfulness. And of course, when you're young, when you're, you know, a baby or when you're a teenager, a young adult, I would expect that you have maximum youthfulness, right? You have sort of energy, activity, vim and vigor of life. And then as you age, at a certain point, that starts to decline, right? And I've got two scenarios for aging here. The line on the top is that line where you maintain as much youthfulness as you can until much later in life, right? And then it might decline rapidly. You don't necessarily have to live longer, but it's actually about youth span. It's about as much life as you can get in your days, right? And so you don't want it to be a long, slow decline, which is called morbidity or age-related morbidity. You want to actually have great health and youthfulness all the days of your life if you can. I like to call it dying young, as late in life as possible. And so that's sort of what we started to look at. And here again, it's using gene expression to look at what represents healthy aging, represents maybe less than optimum aging from a youth span perspective. And so this was, again, developed from this proprietary gene expression. And this gave us insights into healthy aging and allowed us to screen a lot of ingredients. It's backed by this more than 30 years of anti-aging gene expression and nutrition science that I've already sort of introduced to you. So the gentleman on the right there, that's Richard Weinrich, and the CSO of the company right behind him, Joe Chang. And there we have on the left the lady explaining something to Joe. That's our Vice President of Research for the personal care side. So I talked about how this gene expression, the gene chip basically allows us to screen for ingredients. And that's what we're able to do. And we found actually that a number of the ingredients that sort of tickled the gene expression in the most positive way were ingredients that we don't get a lot of in our diet. And in fact, you know, with our experience in aging or anti-aging type of potential products, these ingredients came from all around the world. And so they're the kind of ingredients that perhaps in one corner of the world they have a lot of, but in that same corner of the world they don't have ingredients that come from other parts of the world. Some are unusual, things like purple corn, which only a certain species that grows in South America, not in other places, has these interesting polyphenols called anthocyanidins that seem to be very active in tickling gene expression and helping it to mimic that of healthy aging. And so the story goes on, a lot of interesting ingredients there. Now, how are these working? What's going on here? What is it about this gene expression pattern that is in our hands affecting patterns of healthy and youthful aging? Let's look at it from this point of view. If you look at a cell, gene expression really is at the core of everything that happens. It's as far upstream as you can go in terms of the biology of the cell. It's really the command and the control center of the cell is in the nucleus where the genes are. So this is where the blueprint is. And if you can imagine, everything good that happens in the body, everything, the way that the cell behaves really begins with gene expression. But there are a lot of things, whether it's our lifestyle, our environment, or actually even just life itself, metabolizing the food that we eat and converting the fuel, the sugar, combining that with oxygen to produce energy. These things actually have a price, a biochemical price, really. The mitochondria, for example, combining fuel with oxygen and creating energy, but there is a leakage of some of this sort of metabolic exhaust that's called free radicals. So, the general picture is that from the inside and from the out, there are stresses, there are aging aggressors, there are things that are wearing out the machinery of the cell. There are things from the inside, there are things from the outside. Stress, toxins, sun exposure, all these things you can just sort of imagine are pushing against the cell, and the cell needs to be able to push back against this aging process. So we call that aging defense, and the way that the cell deals with that is called the aging defense mechanisms. And I've listed 6 sort of basic areas of this aging defense that the cell is able to orchestrate. For example, DNA protection and repair. Each cell encounters just numberless attacks on it each day that damage and break the DNA strands. And so the body has to be able to create and maintain enzymes that protect and repair the DNA, constantly repairing it. And we have inflammatory balance going on. We have a stress response. We have antioxidant defense and tissue renewal. For example, when the machinery in the cell wears out, there are components of the cell that are able to recognize the worn proteins and either replace them or break them down and replace them, or else repair them. So all of these things are going on. These are the aging defense mechanisms that we have. So I've described how we have gene expression that helps us to zero in on this. And some of it may seem, I guess, a little academic to you, but we have really nice evidence on the gene expression side, which I'm not sharing here, heat maps and all sorts of things that can get quite complex, and I do share in my more technical presentations. But just as an overview today, the first thing, of course, the first step is that we have the gene expression model, where we identify the ways that genes express themselves in healthy aging. We screen the ingredients and we formulate, and then we test that formulation in that gene expression model again to make sure that it is still holding that same pattern of gene expression that's healthy. And then the next step then is to test for functional effect in the right model. So I guess the best model would be getting a bunch of humans together, maybe a few thousand, and feeding them this ingredient and following their lives for 50 or 100 years. But that's kind of impractical and expensive, and all sorts of problems with that approach. So you try to find models that you can use, clinical studies that last a lot less time, but sort of give you an insight into whether or not you're achieving some of your goals. So let me share with you one experiment. This is a human clinical study, 60 individuals over 2 months. And this was actually looking at an insult on skin, so irradiation of patches of skin that are not normally in the sun. And you can see, for example, on the top, these individuals at baseline, there's a patch of skin there with no irradiation. And then you see 1 MED, 2 MED, 3 MED. So it's increasing level of irradiation, basically an insult to the skin that causes inflammation. So the redness is a sign of inflammation. And you can see more of this insult creates more inflammation. You can also measure, so we did biopsies of the skin, and we were able to give a number associated with the number of damaged cells per square millimeter. And in another part of this, we also look at DNA damage. So we get a lot of data from the skin, and it represents at least 3 different areas that I described in those 6 circles that you saw earlier, right? Sort of DNA protection, inflammation, and also cell damage. And you can see that after 2 months on this formulation, the same individual 2 months later, and that the same level of irradiation caused a lot less obvious damage in the skin. You see less number of cells that were damaged there. and less inflammation. So that's a demonstration that the body is, as I described, pushing back, or that its aging defense mechanisms have been bolstered, and it's able to push back against these aging aggressors. So, we're doing this experiment in skin, but remember, skin is just a model of these aging defense mechanisms, and this we expect would be working throughout the entire body. Another area that we've been really interested, of course, is antioxidant protection. There are many ingredients, it turns out, in the product that also provide antioxidant defense. And we have the biophotonic scanner that's able to non-invasively measure skin carotenoids. Now, the scale here goes right down to 0. The average person who started this study and was around, you can see they're just under 30,000 units. And by 10, 12 weeks, you can see that it's actually increased by about 10,000, which is a significant level. For most people, that's putting them in a much better position in terms of their antioxidant defense. So those are 2 of the clinical studies that we've done so far. We have at least 2 others that are in the pipeline that we hope to finish soon and are very exciting. We don't generally talk about our clinical studies very much until they're done, so stand by for those. But it's a really nice way to really confirm the work that we've done, that the gene expression work does actually lead to physiological help and anti-aging defense. So while we've been doing this on the nutrition side, of course, the personal care folks haven't been settling idle by either. We've been working on some amazing new innovation in the science of skin anti-aging and personalization. So in an absolute world first, Nu Skin has invented and developed ageLOC Me, which is a smart device and a new way to experience your own version of personal care. It's touchless, it's hygienic, just a whole new way of looking at personal care. Of course, we're able to customize on the basis of your age or your ethnicity and climate, whatever your aging concern may be, or your personal preferences, whether you like, perfume, or you need more SPF factor or whatever. And the interesting thing about this is that it can deliver ingredients and formulations together at the moment of use. And that means we're able to put more of the, more efficacious level in some cases of these actives that are anti-aging. That, some of these actives don't play very nicely when they're formulated at high concentrations in one single formulation. So when you can combine them at the point of use, it can really add a dimension to it. And again, of course, this is using our most advanced ageLOC formulations, based again on the same strategy, the same gene chips, looking at gene expression that's more targeted and focused on the skin and what's going on as skin ages, and looking at, so far, of course, we've had a lot of science to help us understand some of these actives in skin, but a whole new dimension is added by using this ageLOC approach. So I began by talking about Chris Rock and how well he's doing in his first 50 years, and so I might ask each of you that's listening, what about the next 50 years of your life? How is that going to be, and other things that you can do to influence so that you can discover the best you? So I hope that gives you a little insight into the history of ageLOC, where this technology is coming from, how unique it is. I don't know of anyone else that is, as deeply entrenched in this area as we are. It's a high barrier to entry. It's really high science and high price, but I believe it's yielding us some really unique and amazing insights on aging. And certainly it's going to carry us for a long way into the future.
Mark, thank you so much. There's hundreds and hundreds of people on this webinar right now, really excited about the information you shared. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for letting me spend some time with you.
Great. Well, maybe questions are pouring in. I know I stopped the recording, but maybe we can get you again. I'll get all these questions together. Maybe we can continue on, Mark, at another date. Really love hearing from you. Really, thank you so much for all the information that you've shared with us tonight.
My pleasure, anytime.
Okay. Good night, everyone.